Hey, what's going on, Guardians? My name is The Black Link. And of course, today is April 9th, 2019, and we had the release of Destiny 2 Patch Update 2.2.1 go into effect. This dropped alongside Arc Week, which is a celebration of all things electric in the world of Destiny 2. And in this video, we are going to be going over just the patch notes. This is going to be a straight patch note reading video. You Guardians know what that means. Put it on in the background if you want to hear all the notes and stuff like that. It's going to be a big, long, boring one. Treat it a bit like a podcast, you know. But alright, let's go ahead and dive on in. Now, some of the stuff we actually covered in the TWAB last week, so you're going to have a bit of a head start if you watched our wrap-up video for that. But there's going to be a lot of subclass changes coming for some of the pre-Forsaken Arc subclasses. So let's go ahead and dive on in. First things first, the big sandbox changes. We have got changes coming to the Titan class. Striker, Code of the Juggernaut. For frontal assault ability, they've buffed the duration from 10 seconds to 16 seconds. The buff timer is now displayed on the HUD. And the buff now increases weapon damage, up to 25% in PvE and 20% in PvP. Very big changes, we covered it last week. Next, we've got Knockout. The buff duration is increased from 3 to 5 seconds. That buff is no longer disabled after getting one melee attack in. And in addition to breaking a shield, the buff now triggers once you deal 60% damage to a target. Any damage dealt after 60% is going to refresh that timer, allowing you to keep this Knockout buff going. They've also increased the bonus melee damage from 25% to 60%. Major buff to Knockout there. Additionally, we've got a general bug fix where they fix an issue where Titans using the Code of the Missile could perform the wrong melee attack. Alright, that's it for Titans. Moving on to the Hunters, we've got Arc Strider, the Way of the Warrior path. First up, Combination Blow. Bonus melee damage can now be stacked up to 3 times. The buff has increased melee damage by 60% per stack in PvE for a total of a 180% buff to the melee damage that you can stack with Combination Blow. And the buff now increases melee damage by 22.7% per stack in PvP. This ability was previously 1 stack and increased melee damage by 50%, so a very sizable buff there. Kills with this ability now heal 40 health in addition to starting health regen. Next ability they changed is Deadly Reach. They've increased the buff duration from 6 to 8 seconds, and the buff is no longer consumed by a melee hit. Moving on to the Way of the Wind Arc Strider subpath. First up, Disorienting Blow. They've increased the melee disorient distance from 4 meters to 6 meters, and they've increased the duration of the disorient on players from 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds. Very big change. Focus Breathing now sees increased dodge recharge bonus while sprinting from 50% to 100%, basically doubling that bonus there. For Combat Meditation, they've increased the bonus grenade and melee regeneration while bloodied by 25%. That means when your health gets into critical, your grenade and melee regeneration is going to be boosted by 25%. Not bad. For Lightning Reflexes, they've increased the damage resistance while dodging from 25% to 40% in PvP, and they've increased the damage resistance while dodging from 63% to 70% in PvE. Very big damage mitigation there for Lightning Reflexes. That's it for the changes for Hunters. Moving on to Warlocks now. We've got some general arc changes for the Stormcaller Super. The damage now scales up to 150% over 5 seconds of continuous use of the attack. They've also updated the special FX and audio to support this functionality. This basically means when you're using Stormtrance, you have to hold the attack button, and the longer you hold that attack button, the stronger it's going to get on enemies. Moving on to the Attunement of Conduction, the Chain Lightning melee ability has seen some changes. It can now chain up to 5 times, up from the 1 chain we used to have, and each individual target can be hit twice. Major change there. The chain damage is also decreased from 50 to 31 damage per hit. To accommodate for the extra change, you can chain 5 times now, and you can hit twice on the same enemy, so they had to bump that damage down a little bit, or else it might have been a little bit broken in PvE and maybe even PvP. For Arc Web, they've increased the chain range from 10 meters to 12 meters. It can now chain to many more targets and back and forth between targets, very good change. And chaining arc damage now reduces the cooldown of your grenade. Very happy to hear about that last part right there. This works with arc web chains and chains from Chain Lightning Melee. You can earn 3% energy per instance of damage in PvE and earn 10% energy per instance of damage in PvP. This is going to build into the whole using your melees and grenades to build back energy so you can keep using those abilities. It's very similar to what the Stormcaller had back in Destiny 1. Alright, moving on to the attunement of the elements. First up, we've got Electrostatic Surge. They've increased the bonus regeneration rate of Rift by 600% per nearby friendly Guardian. They've also added a UI notification when the buff is active. This now extends Rift duration from 15 to 20 seconds. Very big change for Electrostatic Surge. It basically means as long as you're staying next to your teammates, you should have your Rift up almost all the time. The Arc Soul has also had its duration extended from 8 seconds to 12 seconds. And that's it for the Stormcaller changes. Next up are the Voidwalker Nova Warp buffs. This is what we've been waiting for. I've had a chance to play around with it in Crucible already. It feels really good. They've reduced the initial charge detonation energy cost by about 20%. They've also reduced the energy cost of holding that charge detonation by 7%. They've reduced the time required to fully charge the charge detonation from 0.9 seconds to 0.7 seconds. And this is a big one to me, and they've reduced the Dark Blink cost by 20%. This is that ionic kind of blink you get in your super that allows you to gap close on enemies. That 20% reduction is huge. You can close so much distance now without using all of your super energy with Nova Warp. It feels really good. And finally, they've increased the base super duration from 18 seconds to 22 seconds. Hopefully Nova Warp feels a bit better and more consistent for you in PvP. I know I've had a lot of fun with it in Mayhem thus far. But after those buffs comes one rather big nerf to Dawnblade. They're nerfing the Everlasting Fire ability. They've tuned the amount of super gain from Everlasting Fire. Basically, the initial return has been increased from 10% to 13%, but the return then decays linearly over the course of 30 kills from 13% to 0.75% per kill. Basically, this is what they did for some of the other supers like for Striker. Initially, when you're getting kills with Everlasting Fire, you're going to get a lot more energy back. You're going to get 13% of your super energy back. But once you've reached about 30 kills, it's going to taper down significantly from 13% energy per kill to 0.75% energy per kill, so that you can't have infinite super. I talked about this last week. This is basically done so that you can't have infinite super in game modes like the Reckoning, and is in line with some of the other classes. I'm still sad to see the nerf come though. Anyways, that's it for the subclass changes in the sandbox. Next up, we've got some ability bug fixes. First up, they fixed an issue where the Warlock ability Bloom was not dealing any damage. They've also improved the consistency of handheld Supernova. And finally, they fixed a bug in which canceling Blade Barrage allowed players to traverse across the map. Rest in peace with that last one. It allowed you to basically kind of turn yourself into a man cannon by casting and canceling the Blade Barrage super. Sad to see it go. Next up, we've got some changes coming to weapons. First up, the Last Word. They've added a timer to the Fanfire perk. Woo! Wiping my brow there, glad they're not nerfing anything with the Last Word, but we are getting a pretty big nerf when it comes to the Wardcliff Coil, which recently saw a major damage increase against bosses and vehicles and whatnot in PvE. Apparently that increase was a little bit too much because they've reduced the PvE damage of Wardcliff Coil by 25% against bosses and vehicles. I guess we were melting some of those guys a little bit too quickly, so it's been tuned down a bit. Now note, this is a nerf, but I know you guys are going to be upset about that, but this is still basically a pretty big buff. The Wardcliff Coil got what, a 10 to 15% damage buff against bosses a couple of weeks back, so this is taking that down by about 25%, but it's still way stronger than it was before the previous patch update. Moving on to some general weapon bug fixes, we fixed a material on Coldheart that was no longer shiny. Now all of it should be shiny. They fixed an issue where the ready audio on Viced submachine guns was not playing on PS4. They've updated the Mega Neuro perk's description to be more accurate, to say that it deals more damage, isn't necessarily much bigger than a normal Dragonfly ability. They fixed an issue where the grenade launcher initial ammo had been unintentionally reduced, thank you. They fixed an issue bug where the powerful statement ornament was visible in the loaded questions ornament socket before it had been properly obtained. They fixed an issue where Thorn dismantled faster than any other exotic weapons. And next, they fixed an issue where the ATB long-range scope was erroneously highlighting enemies when equipped on the Long Shadow sniper rifle. Next up, the Recluse now appears in collections only when it has been obtained to match the behavior of other Pinnacle PvP weapons, so you can't, get a sneak peek at it. Next up, they fixed an issue that caused poor scope behavior on the Prospector's ornament, Caution, Heavy Machinery. They fixed an issue where the Wish Ender did not highlight targets while the user was invisible. Next, they fixed an issue where Jotun was recorded as a scout rifle. Don't know if I've ever noticed that, but then again, I don't have Jotun. They fixed an issue where the Vow could not be infused above 650, and finally, they fixed an issue where the accuracy ring was not visible on the reticle of linear fusion rifles when using a controller on PC. Very specific issue there. Glad they got that worked out. Next up, we've got some changes coming to armor, mostly bug fixes. First up, using Getaway Artist with Storm Grenades now correctly spawns a supercharged Arc Soul. Guess that didn't work before. The Crown of Tempest once again works with Ball Lightning. Thank you very much for that fix. Especially since Stormcaller just got a buff, Crown of Tempest is probably going to be seeing a lot of use in PvP. Give it a shot. Stronghold will now no longer drain heavy ammo while guarding with Black Talon. Thank you. Stronghold is, of course, the new Titan exotic that allows you to guard without consuming heavy ammo. Glad they fixed that. Next up, we've got some major changes coming to the way investment rewards work. Alright, let's check it out. First up, they've increased the drop rates of items in the Last Wish raid. 1,000 Voices has seen an increase from 5% up to 10%. Yay, double drop rate. I wonder if that means I'll finally be able to get this exotic now. I better go blow up Riven. For the Glittering Key, they've increased the drop rate from 5% to 20%. Major increase there. This is used to acquire the Last Wish ship, Ermine TAC 717. The Wishmaker's Shell has seen a drop rate increase from 2% to 20%, and the Cleansing Knife Last Wish Sparrow has seen a drop rate increase from 5% to 20%. Next up, we've got some increased drop rates for the items in the Dreaming City. First up, for the Palace Galliot, that's the Dreaming City ship. The drop rate has increased from 2% to 20%. The Starlight Ghost Shell has seen an increase from 2% to 20%. And the Silver Tercel, which is the Sparrow, has gone from 5% to 20%. Major drop chance increases there. I'm loving this. They've also increased the drop rate of lore books. Specifically for Cade Stash lore, the treasure map chest drop chance has increased from 40% to 100%, giving you that lore, and the planetary chest drop chance has gone from 4% to 50%. So you absolutely should be getting the rest of those lore books if you're opening planetary chests, or if you still have some of Cade's treasure maps. I know some of you out there are nostalgic like me and hold on to stuff like that. Next up, for the Dreaming City, lore drops for public events completed has gone from 2.5% to 50%. For the Ascendant Challenge, from 2.5% to 100%. Get those Ascendant Challenges done every week. For Blindwell, tiers 1 through 3, they've gone from 5% to 50% for lore drops. For Lost Sectors, it's from 1.25% to 100%. Wow, you had a 1% chance. Well, 1.25% chance to get lore drops from Lost Sectors. That's crazy. That's gone up to 100%, so you can just go run Lost Sectors to get lore. And then in a final change, the Maracena lore book was missing 2 entries. Revanche 1 and Palin Genesis 3. These entries now unlock after you unlock all the other entries. You should be able to get that lore stuff done now. Next up, the Tangled Shore lore. Your chance at getting lore drops from public events has been increased from 6.5% to 50%. From Heroic Adventures, from 16% to 50%. And finally, from Lost Sectors, from 3% to 50%. Not too bad at all. Next up, Gunsmith Reputation packages now only reward Gunsmith weapons. That's actually not exactly true. I think he's still dropping that one rocket launcher that's available in like other world rewards as well. But for the most part, if you're hunting down that Orentil, that perfect roll, you should have a better opportunity of getting it now than you did before. Next up, we've got 4 new exotic weapon catalysts that are now available to drop in Nightfalls, Strikes, and the Crucible. And I say new there with air quotes. We've known about these since summer of last year. The Prospector, the Rat King, the Hardlight, and the Suros Regime catalysts are now dropping in game. For the first 3, Prospector, Rat King, and Hardlight, you can get those catalysts by running Strikes or completing Nightfalls, and the Suros Regime catalyst will drop from Crucible. Mayhem is live this week. Go spam it, it'll probably drop in that. Good luck, Guardians, on getting those catalysts and getting the challenges for them done. Moving on, Xur's inventory now offers random rolled perks for armor, and faded engrams from Xur now have the chance to reward Forsaken exotics. That was kind of an addendum. They updated this article to add that in there. But it's definitely true. Some people who stuck by Xur past reset and went to go buy some of their faded engrams actually wound up getting stuff like Wave Splitter from him now, which is of course the Void exotic trace rifle and is now seemingly available on both Xbox One and the PC platform. So if you're you Guardians out there who've been waiting for that one, I'm right there with you. I can't wait for Friday to roll around for me to pick that up. Hopefully my faded engram will give me that. But anyways, moving on here to the quests and bounties. Power Surge bounties that have expired or been deleted are now available on the Drifter, though each bounty can still be completed only once per character. Additionally, Power Surge bounties now specify requires annual pass and level 50 if either requirement is not met. Next up, Reaping in the Wild's Gambit Prime bounty now progresses from all high-value targets in free roam. A very interesting change there. Players who sided with the Vanguard on the Allegiance quest can now also bank motes in normal Gambit to progress on the Prime Research quest step, and quest progress for the Survival Guide or Hidden Message quest steps will now reinitialize properly. If you're stuck on these quest steps, you should abandon them and pick them up again from the Drifter to update the tapes discovered count. Next, the weekly lockout reset for Invitations of the Nine has been moved to Thursday Reset, around 1700 UTC. Players will now have 2 extra days to complete them before being locked out of a new invitation the following Friday. So if you find yourself a week behind because maybe you waited a couple of days to complete your Invitation of the Nine, they're moving that completion date forward by 2 days to give you a little bit of extra time. Next up, Lost Sector Gambit Prime bounty now progresses from all Lost Sectors. All 4 weekly roll bounties for Gambit Prime now grant powerful head rewards, thank you Bungie, and the Yes Sir, I'm a Closer weekly Gambit Prime bounty now awards 4 points for a win and 2 points for a loss, with a completion value of 20 points. Alright, that is it for the quest bounties. Next up, we've got some changes coming to pursuits. First up, 801 will now offer all 7 weapon frames each and every week. Very good change. Players can still complete only 2 powerful frames each week, at which point remaining frames are removed until weekly reset. They've also fixed an issue where players could acquire pinnacle weapons once per character. Pinnacle weapons are meant to be acquired only once per account, so like what you could do is you could go and pick up the pinnacle weapon quest on all 3 of your characters, complete it since it's tied to a triumph, and then just like pick up powerful rewards on all 3 characters if you had those quests. Now it's going to complete once per account. Anyways, moving on, Drifter's weekly roll bounties will now properly count motes wagered in the Reckoning when the mote is a lower tier than the activity itself. Next up, Gambit Prime now counts to unlock the weekly Gambit Clan Engram. Thank you Bungie, needed that change. And when recycling scents at the Drifter, the error "Your Glimmer is full" will now be properly displayed on all 4 scents. Next, they fixed an issue with the Sentry emblem where killing giant blockers wasn't incrementing the blockers killed stat. And finally, they fixed an issue where the Gambit Prime weekly challenge didn't display completion in the UI. There we go, that's all the changes that are there for pursuits. Next up, we've got the changes coming to triumphs. First, they fixed an issue where triumphs from previous seasons were counting glory win streaks in the current season. They fixed an issue where the triumph "The Best Offense" was not giving credit for all of the orbs generated. Happy to see that change. And the Hall triumphs Greater Powers and 9 can now be completed and will initialize for players who have already completed them as soon as they enter orbit. Moving on to some of the general changes, the Arsenic Bite now drops with random rolls. They've removed the Vestian Dynasty from the general loot pools, so you hopefully will see less of that sidearm. And they fixed an issue where the Braytech RWP Mark II could not be infused above 600. This is the scout rifle that you got before getting the Polaris Lance. They've also increased the drop rate of Polestar 2 Ghost Shell from 1% to 4%. And finally, they fixed an issue where the Obsidian Crystal would sometimes not drop from the Unidentified Frame quest step. Alright, next up we've got some changes coming to activities. Some of this we learned about in previous weeks and they're very good. First up for Reckoning. Reckoning Tier 2 and Tier 3 boss kills now always have a chance to award a Gambit Prime weapon. Thank you. And the chances for weapon rewards increase each time a boss is killed without a weapon drop. Kind of like Escalation Protocol, so if you're farming for that perfect roll of the shotgun, you know, the next time the Knight Brothers are up, each time you complete Tier 2 or Tier 3 Reckoning, you're going to have a chance at that drop. And each time you don't get it, your chance is going to increase on your subsequent run. So basically, the more you run the activity, the better your chances of getting that loot are. Very good change. Players near the bank should also no longer be able to see waypoints until they jump through the portal. And when players jump through the portal, they should be placed in one of 3 active locations. Anytime before players begin capturing the bridge, it'll be over the Horde mode area. Anytime after players begin capturing the bridge, before they fully capture the bridge at the beginning of the bridge, and after players fully capture the bridge and begin the boss fight, it'll be at the end of the bridge, hopefully to cut down on some of the extra running you have to do. And finally, they fixed an issue where the Tier 1 Deceived Nokris was not summoning its taken war beasts, you know, the little shadow dogs. Alright, moving on to changes coming to Gambit Prime. Some Reckoning weapons now have a chance to drop as match completion rewards from Gambit Prime, and just like with Reckoning, the chances increase after each Gambit Prime match without a weapon drop. Very happy to hear about that. An invasion kill now heals 8% of a Primeval's health, down from 12%, and the invasion portal cooldown time during the Primeval phase has been increased to 40 seconds, up from 30 seconds. Very happy about that change right there. I am one of the people, I love Gambit Prime. I love it so much more than normal Gambit, but I definitely do agree that there were a few too many invasions during the Primeval Envoy phase when you're trying to build up damage against the boss. It just seemed a little bit too quick. And when you're running with blueberries who just, for whatever reason, know an invasion is coming and still kill that last Primeval Envoy either right as the invasion's happening or after they've already come in. I'm glad we're going to have an extra 10 seconds to, plan things a little bit better there. This cooldown triggers after a player has been killed or successfully returns from an invasion. Next, they fixed an issue where all Gambit medals that shipped in Forsaken were not displaying in the HUD when players earned them in Prime. After that, they fixed an issue where the Primeval Hobgoblin was not functioning properly in Gambit Prime, and they've reintroduced a specific boss into Gambit Prime. Next up, they fixed an issue where killing players in subsequent Wells of Light would unintentionally count towards earning the well medal. After that, they fixed an issue on Deep 6 and New Arcadia where the Ascendant Primeval Servitor wasn't summoning immunity blights. And finally, the Burrow front on Deep 6 had some minor adjustments to reduce combatant environment collisions. And yes, they did misspell it. It's not 6 deep, it's supposed to be Deep 6 there. Alright, after that, we've got some changes coming to the normal Gambit game mode. High value targets now have a chance to spawn during the first round of a Gambit match. The chance for a high value target to spawn in the second round has also been increased. For private matches, sudden death can now be enabled or disabled via the rounds to win option. They fixed an issue where the open 24/7 medal could be acquired during a sudden death round of Gambit, and they fixed an issue where the Rainmaker medal could be acquired during a sudden death round of Gambit as well. Additionally, in a big change, the Gambit intro cinematics now run at unlocked frame rates on PC. So if you're on PC, you get to see all the glory of the ding, ding, ding cutscene at whatever frame rate your PC can handle. They've also fixed an issue where Scorn Captain's immunity totems were not properly shielding combatants. I'm actually sad to see they fixed that. They fixed an issue where the Drifter was announcing portals up after the round had ended. And they've reduced the number of required blockers to send for the Taken Herder, Shepherd, and Whisperer triumphs. Next up, they've reduced the number of required motes to bank in order to achieve the Protect the Runner triumph. This was like where you had to bank, I think, 100 motes without dropping any in a single game. So it looks like they might have dropped the requirements of that, which will make getting Dredgen a little bit easier for people. After that, they fixed an issue where players who are being restricted from the Crucible and Gambit due to poor network quality were unable to launch Gambit private matches. Woo, we're almost done, I promise. Finally, they fixed an issue where Infamy ranks could be repeatedly reset without needing to progress through the ranks between each reset. That's all the changes that came to the normal Gambit game mode. Moving on, we have got some changes coming to strikes. They fixed an issue where the Grav lift would sometimes be missing in the Warden of Nothing strike. And of course, for your Nightfall challenge card, Nightfall tickets now have a min-max and a plus or minus 25 for incrementing power reduction. This will allow players to get to the plus 100 power reduction easier to increase their score multiplier. Basically, you used to have to do it by 1 point, and now you can go by plus or minus 25. It's just going to make that process a little bit speedier. For the Crucible, in comp, they fixed an issue where players who were disconnected from Destiny servers could not rejoin games in the comp playlist. For Iron Banner, the curated role of the Wizened Rebuke fusion rifle that was awarded from completing the Atlas Unbound triumph will now appear in Lord Saladin's inventory so that players can inspect it prior to acquisition. And once earned, the weapon may be viewed in collections. Also, the curated role for the Wizened Rebuke fusion rifle can now be reacquired from collections for the same cost as other masterworked curated role weapons. After that, the heaviest Iron Emblem may be earned when securing 2,500 kills under the effects of the Iron Burden. They've also removed the ship Volk CER from collections due to an issue impacting the ship, but you can expect it to return in a future season. Next up are changes to patrols. They fixed an issue where the Architects would sometimes kill Guardians for absolutely no reason in a very specific area of the Dreaming City. Oh, those gosh darn Architects. They have the highest KD in the history of the franchise. Alright, we're getting there. Next up, we've got some changes to combatant AI. For general changes, they fixed an issue where the Taken Hydra rotating shield would flicker when shielded by Taken Goblins, and they fixed an issue where the Ultra Taken Hobgoblin was using the swarm attack more frequently than intended. Thank you for that one, Bungie. I hate that swarm attack. Next up, we've got some UI changes. Players will now always see equipped titles when inspecting another player. The weapon ornament powerful statement is no longer visible in the socket preview for loaded question before being obtained. I think they mentioned that earlier in these patch notes. The Postmaster open bundle confirmation dialog now shows appropriate strings when it pops up. It would previously cause occasional crashes. And the material cost no longer appears red on vendor tooltips if the item is not purchasable, but you have enough material. Finally, they fixed the description on some bounties to correctly read ability kills instead of just kills. Hopefully a little bit less confusion there. Alright, and our last change, our final change, is one that doesn't really mean much to you console players out there, but to us PC players who have noticed really poor performance on D2 over the past couple of weeks. They fixed an issue where performance on PC would slowly degrade over time. Thank you, Bungie. Thank you, Bungie. Thank you, Bungie. I've definitely noticed a bit of a change in PC performance over the past couple of weeks, especially after long play sessions, so hopefully that's not going to be a thing anymore. But there we go, Guardians. That is it for the patch notes for update 2.2.1. If you made it this far, let us know in the comment section below by just giving us a big sheesh. Oh man, there was a lot to cover in this one. But this update has been a very good one. It dropped alongside Arc Week. There's a lot of cool stuff to do. Wave Splitter is in the game for everybody now, so I'm happy about that. The subclass changes have been fantastic. I hope you Guardians are getting some time to jump out there and test out some of the subclasses that maybe you haven't used for a while, and maybe you're noticing that they're working a little bit better. Either way, that is it for the patch notes. Those are some of my thoughts on it. Be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like. Make sure you subscribe and stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. But that is going to be it for this one, Guardians. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this extremely long podcast of a video. And as always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians, stay frosty.